That night, something shattered the line between past, present, and future. And I realized too late that I wasn't just exploring an abandoned hospital, but stepping into a place where time traps everything that dares to cross it. My pursuit of fame turned into a nightmare with no way out, and every second lost, there was a step deeper into a cycle that would never end. Before starting the report, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Write in the comments what time this video arrived for you. Now, enjoy your favorite horror session. I grew up hearing strange stories in my grandparents' house. Whispered tales about places that should be avoided, filled with secrets no one was meant to uncover. My parents were never the superstitious type, never talked about ghosts or hauntings, but my grandmother firmly believed some stories held truths time itself tried to bury. I didn't believe, at least not until I started exploring ruins and abandoned buildings for my YouTube channel. I wanted more than views. I wanted to be remembered. I wanted my adventures to become legendary. When I heard about the psychiatric hospital shut down 40 years ago just outside Asheville, North Carolina, I couldn't resist. The story was that it had closed after a mysterious fire consumed an entire wing, but the real reason had never been revealed. What few knew, and what I didn't realize until I got there, was that the hospital held more than just charred walls and forgotten rumors. It was built over a temporal anomaly. That day, arriving at the rusted gate with my camera rolling and my heart racing, the first thing I felt was an unnatural chill, as if the air had been compressed for decades, ready to burst in any direction. The hallways, dark and silent, seemed to breathe. I started filming, eager to capture everything, but a question crept in. Why were the doors closed, yet some creaked as if someone or something was inside? Exploring the first floor, I found a room where time seemed frozen. The furniture was intact, untouched by fire. On the floor, an old radio still played a news station from 1983. A faint whisper seemed to call my name, but when I turned around, no one was there. The camera, which until then had shown only what I saw, began showing images I hadn't filmed. Flashes of a silhouette, my own figure walking down hallways I hadn't reached yet, through doors I hadn't opened. It was as if the hospital were alive, or worse, predicting my every move. With each step, questions multiplied. Who were the people I glimpsed wearing outdated uniforms, chatting as if the hospital were still running? They ignored me, trapped in an endless routine. Did they not know they were dead? Or worse, were they trapped like I was? And why was I there, even knowing that fame would never be worth my sanity? In the dead of night, as despair crept in, I found an exit. The weak light of dawn made me believe I had escaped, but I had no idea the real nightmare was just beginning. By the time I got home, the sun was high. I just wanted to forget, but something felt wrong the moment I stepped in. Things in my apartment were off. A glass I was sure I left in the sink was now on the table. A crooked picture frame, a clock showing the wrong time. At first I blamed exhaustion or a frayed mind from the night's tension, but the mirror revealed the truth in a disturbing way. My reflection didn't move in sync with me. There was a slight delay, like watching someone else controlling my actions with a few seconds lag. I blinked, shook my head. Nothing changed. The sense that something was wrong grew heavier. I grabbed my phone to check my channel notifications, and to my shock, I found videos I didn't remember recording or posting. They were inside the hospital, dated days after I had supposedly left. The footage showed a version of me walking down corridors I swore I'd never seen, talking to figures that seemed to flicker between shadow and light, vanishing when I tried to focus. Who posted that, and how? I started to question my sanity, but the doubt deepened when an anonymous message appeared in my inbox. You never really left. That led me to my attic, a place I almost never visited. Among dusty boxes, I found an old VHS tape labeled Discharge, Patient 118. I didn't even remember owning a VCR, but I plugged it in, curious. The image flickered, static filled the screen until a scene emerged, chilling and clear. Me, visibly younger, being admitted to that same hospital in the 1980s. Watching that tape, I saw my pale face, wide-eyed with fear, as I was led through the institution's doors. A nurse's voice echoed, speaking of a temporal paradox and the need to keep the cycle alive. What did it mean? Had I been trapped in that hospital all along? Was I part of some experiment? Or worse, a mistake that couldn't be undone? As days passed, I noticed subtle shifts in my routine, in the people around me, as if my existence had become an intersection between two realities. At night as I slept, I felt presences nearby, voices whispering promises and threats, and always the feeling of being watched by something that didn't just want to trap me, it wanted to replace me. Then I understood. I was no longer just an explorer chasing fame. I had become part of the anomaly itself, caught in an infinite loop where past, present, and future merged in a temporal maze the hospital controlled. That place wasn't just an abandoned building, it was a trap for lost souls, a paradox that fed on new identities to continue existing outside time. And at that moment, I understood what the message meant. I never truly left the hospital. I was still inside, between layers of time, a living repetition of that eternal cycle. And there was something or someone that needed me to escape, to gain a face in the real world. Now the question that haunts me, the one that brought me here, is this. By recording and trying to expose everything, did I become part of what I tried to reveal? Was the fame I so desperately wanted just bait to pull me into this nightmare? And as I write this, I feel the camera, turned off in the corner of my room, powering on by itself, ready to show scenes I haven't lived yet. Scenes where I may no longer know who is the prisoner and who is the captor. Because in the end, the only certainty is that time in that hospital was never linear, and I'm just one more piece in a game that never ends. Are you enjoying the video? Leave your comment. Your support is very important to the channel. Now let's move on to the next report. I never believed in ghost stories. I grew up in a house filled with tales my grandparents used to tell about the past. Old legends, prayers to ward off evil, and warnings not to mess with things we don't understand. My mom always said the human mind has limits that shouldn't be crossed, that there are doors not meant to be opened. I heard all of it, but thought it was just a way for people to manage fear. Until that night. It happened after we visited the abandoned hospital on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina. The idea was simple: record a night exploration video for my friend's channel. I didn't even want to go, but I couldn't say no. It was just an old building with faded walls, broken windows, and a heavy silence. My friends talked about stories of mad doctors, missing patients, things that sounded like urban legends. I just felt a strange chill down my spine, like something invisible was watching us. I woke up the next morning in my bed, as always, but something was wrong. First, I noticed the family photo on the wall. It wasn't the one I put there. There were people I didn't recognize, strange faces mixed in with ours. I thought maybe my brothers were pulling a prank, but the silence in the house didn't feel like a joke. I got up and went to the closet. My clothes had been replaced by outfits that didn't match my style, not even the colors I usually wear. My dog, my faithful companion for years, walked past me without recognition, like I was a stranger. He didn't even wag his tail. I grabbed my phone to call my friends, but the numbers didn't exist anymore. I typed, retried, but the phone just wouldn't connect. In panic, I opened social media, posts I hadn't written, messages I never sent, photos I didn't recognize. And the worst part, on the news feed, my face was in reports labeled missing teen, all dated days before our hospital visit. Who was the guy in those photos? Why didn't anyone recognize me, not even my own dog? And what if I wasn't really home? I had to go back to the hospital. Maybe I'd find something there that could explain it. But when I arrived, it wasn't what I expected. A rusted sign read, "Institute for Mind Studies, closed after dimensional incident." My heart raced. It was there, in that forgotten place, that something waited for me, something no one dared talk about. On the ground near the door, an old journal. I began to read, and each word pulled me deeper into a mystery that wasn't just mine. It was about parallel realities, swapped consciousness, a body taken by a stranger who had no intention of leaving. But how had I ended up there? Who was I now? And more importantly, where was my original body? I couldn't take my eyes off the journal. The pages were yellowed, scribbled in frantic handwriting filled with terms that sounded more like a madman's confession than scientific notes. The so-called Institute for Mind Studies wasn't just a hospital. It was a secret research center where, according to the doctor's journal, they tried to push the boundaries of human consciousness, experimenting with the transfer of thoughts, memories, and eventually, an entire identity into another dimension. He wrote about portals between parallel realities, open through patients and volunteers, a dangerous game of exchanges that over time spiraled out of control. Something he called the dimensional incident had happened, and the hospital was shut down in a rush. No official explanation, just silence. My head ached trying to understand how it all connected to me. I thought that adventure would be just another cheap scare video, but now I was trapped in a reality where my entire life had been erased and replaced with an existence that wasn't mine. Then the journal's final entry made me freeze. Consciousness can pass through, but the body it inhabits may not be willing to let go. In some cases, the original body remains, and the invader takes over, making return impossible. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I had switched places with another version of myself. But my original body, the version of me in this dimension, was out there, somewhere, and didn't want to come back. When I looked at the hospital again, I realized the shadows in the windows weren't just tricks of time. They were moving forms. Like the ghosts I used to dismiss were echoes of trapped minds trying to break free. I returned home, trying to find any sign of who was in my place. It was like my life had been stolen by someone or something that wanted to live my story while I wandered in a distorted version of my own existence. I tried again to contact my friends, but the numbers were still gone. Social media still filled with posts made by me, but not by me. And the dog? He didn't recognize me because I wasn't me in that body, not fully. The mind, the spirit, whatever it was split, trapped between two realities. I spent days trying to figure out if there was a way to reverse it. The journal had one last page, torn, where the author tried to describe an experimental procedure to recover the original body. But what scared me most was the final sentence, written in trembling letters. If you're reading this, be careful. Not all yous want to come back, and not all portals close. I finally realized the switch wasn't an accident. It was a trap set by the dimensions, a cruel game where a version of me had invaded my body, and I was stuck in a reality that wasn't mine. The body I inhabited wasn't just mine. It was a prison for another me who had already taken over the life I thought was mine. There was no easy way back, no certainty of where I really was. What I knew was that the real me in that other world was alive and fighting to reclaim his place. But for now, I was stuck here, trapped in a body that no longer recognized me, in a home where nothing was as it seemed. And the question that haunted me since the morning I woke up, who is really alive now? Me or the shadow of my own reflection? Before we move on to the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It's a pleasure to have you here. Now enjoy the moment listening to the next story. I never believed in legends. I grew up hearing my grandparents tell stories that mixed fear, superstition, and a touch of ancestral wisdom. About places where time didn't flow as it should, about shadows that carried forgotten memories. To them, the old rural school on the outskirts of Pine Hollow, Oregon, abandoned since the 90s, was one of those whispered tales shared only at night when the wind seemed to carry the voices of missing children. My childhood was marked by a mix of skepticism and fascination. My parents always said, not everything we see is real, and not everything real can be understood. I never thought those words would one day make sense in my own life. Now, years later, I'm a documentary filmmaker, armed with a thermal camera and a night vision lens, and I've decided to visit that forgotten place. The school stood frozen in time, surrounded by twisted trees that seemed to want to hide what lay inside. The silence was absolute, as if even the air was afraid to move. As I walked through the empty hallways, something inside me shifted. The thermal camera started picking up a strange heat signature. Not mine. Something or someone was there. Later, reviewing the footage on my laptop, the impossible revealed itself. Hours of recordings showed a second me, silently exploring the school, walking down corridors I swear I never entered. That other me seemed to know exactly where to go, unlocking doors that remained shut for me, whispering to nearly invisible figures, shadows that danced along the walls. Why was I seeing this? Who was this reflection? And what did it mean for the truth I thought I knew? As I tried to understand, the footage began to change. The screen grew grainy, the audio distorted. Then I saw it, to my disbelief, a VHS recording dated 1994, showing a child inside that same school. The child was me, but that couldn't be. I grew up hundreds of miles away, far from that place. Something was wrong, or maybe everything was more wrong than I had ever imagined. That night I realized something. The past wasn't a distant place, but a broken mirror in which I might be trapped. And the answer to who I really was could be hidden there, in the shadows of the forgotten school. But am I the original, or just an echo of a mistake in time? The question haunted me as night stretched on. Am I myself, or just a shadow of something that already happened? The cold I had felt outside, near the school, now settled inside me, chilling my bones. I had to understand. I returned the next day, bringing more than cameras this time. I carried my family's history, the beliefs my grandparents had passed down like mantras, and the unshakable feeling that this place held a secret beyond me. Crossing the old creaking gate again, the trees seemed darker, the air heavier. I turned on the thermal and night vision cameras, tools that now seemed to reveal truths beyond my sight. And there he was again, that other me, so silent he looked like a living shadow. But this time, the strange me wasn't just wandering, he was touching things. A desk, a chalkboard, and his breathing seemed to match mine. What was most unsettling was that he never occupied the same space as I did at the same time. As if somewhere, two versions of me coexisted, trapped in time, folding back on itself. As the hours passed, I realized the school was more than just an old abandoned building. It was a portal to the past, a place where time coiled like a serpent devouring its own tail. The stories my grandparents told me about those who vanished weren't just folklore. They had been imprisoned here, versions of themselves frozen in time, as if the school had stolen fragments of reality, creating echoes of everyone it touched. Eventually, I found the records room, a small chamber behind the library. Inside were dusty boxes filled with VHS tapes. I played one, and what I saw made my heart stop. Old footage, dated 1994, showing me as a child, sitting at a desk in that same school. And there was more, a dark figure behind me, like a distorted reflection. Confusion overwhelmed me. How could I be there as a child if my life story said otherwise? My thermal camera picked up a strange heat in the hallway, and as I approached, a voice whispered my name, echoing through the walls. There was no doubt. The school held versions of me and others trapped in overlapping layers of time. I tried to leave, but the hallway stretched endlessly, as if the school itself had gone mad, sucking everything into a temporal prison. And then, right in front of me, the other me appeared, staring with empty eyes that held secrets I was never meant to know. He wasn't my enemy, but a missing piece in a puzzle I hadn't realized I was solving. In a flash, I understood. The original version of me was no longer clear. If I was here now, filming, investigating, maybe I was the copy, a reflection left behind while the real me existed somewhere else in time. My mind reeled with the revelation, but as I accepted it, something shifted. The truth didn't lie in who came first or who was real. The truth of the school was that time didn't forgive, and what it wanted wasn't to destroy. It was to preserve, to keep fragments of people, echoes of stories, alive so they'd never be forgotten. The school wasn't a place of horror. It was living memory, a twisted guardian of the invisible threads connecting past and present. When I finally emerged from that maze of shadows and echoes, I knew one thing. A part of me would always remain there, like a reflection that never fades, a silent witness to what time tried to bury. And that question, once terrifying, had found its answer in silence. I wasn't the original, nor the copy. I was both, an existence folded between two timelines, lost and found, trapped in the story my own life was trying to uncover. The school never stopped watching me, and maybe that's how legends survive. Not as dead stories, but as shadows that continue to walk beside us. Let's move on to the next report. But first, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. They say time erases everything, but what I found in that nursing home about to be demolished proved otherwise. Some things insist on staying, even when no one remembers them anymore. Before that volunteer work, my life was almost colorless, a repetitive cycle of identical days, marked only by the stories my grandparents used to tell when I was a child. They spoke of old beliefs, of restless spirits, of places where death doesn't mean the end, but a kind of prison. I listened, half skeptical, half fascinated, storing those voices deep in my memory. When I agreed to help out at the nursing home in Salem, Massachusetts, I thought it would be a simple task, a chance to do something useful. The old building reeked of forgotten history, cracked walls, dusty windows barely letting in any light. It was easy to feel a weight in the air, like the place was hiding something. I was told demolition would take place in a few weeks. One final visit to clean, organize, maybe donate some of the furniture. On the first night, while cleaning the basement, I found something strange. A small rusted door with an old worn-out lock that wasn't on any blueprint I'd seen. It looked like it had been there for decades, yet no one ever mentioned it. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was just an old maintenance door, forgotten for some reason. But something inside me couldn't stop looking at it, a feeling I couldn't explain. Days later, I started noticing that the door wasn't just in the basement anymore. I first saw it behind the wardrobe in my room at the home. A brief glimpse, a blur in the corner of my eye. That night, I woke to whispers, faint voices, barely audible, pleading to be returned. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me, but the whispers came back, clearer, as if trying to warn me. In the bathroom mirror, the door appeared again. This time I could swear the whispers came from the other side of the glass, mixing voices that seemed to cry and call out for someone. Then I found an old photograph of the home's staff tucked away in a dusty cabinet. In the corner of the image, that same door appeared in the background, a strange, almost imperceptible detail that made my blood run cold. Who were those voices? Why was the door appearing to me? And what did it mean when they asked to be returned? As I tried to find answers, a part of my own memory seemed to slip away, a shadow of something I couldn't reach. My grandfather used to say some places hold secrets that shouldn't be disturbed, and that certain pacts exist to protect whoever's on the other side. Could that door be guarding more than I could imagine? Was my curiosity going to be my downfall? My mind was in chaos. The voices, the whispers, and that door that kept showing up where it shouldn't. It all seemed to be pulling me towards something I didn't fully understand, but could no longer ignore. The feeling of being watched grew stronger each day, and the line between reality and dream began to blur. One night, I couldn't resist anymore. I picked up an old key I'd found lying near the basement door, a rusty piece of metal that looked like it had been forgotten for years. With trembling hands, I turned the key in the lock. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dark, damp corridor that should never have existed in that building. The air was cold, heavy, and I felt a presence both familiar and terrifying. I walked forward, each step echoing in an eerie silence, until I reached a space that looked like the home, but different. The walls were corroded with age, yet a spectral, dim light revealed shadowy figures. They were the elderly residents I'd heard stories about, the ones I knew had died there many years ago. But there was something even more unsettling. They looked at me, and their eyes held recognition. "You are one of us," a voice whispered, shaky but clear. "You've been here before." My chest tightened. The voices in my head began to align with the image before me. Disconnected pieces of memory started to take shape. I remembered. Decades ago, I had been a staff member at that very home. I was there, caring for those seniors, trying to bring them comfort in their final days. But there was a terrible fire, a disaster no one wanted to speak of, and I died that night. Or so I thought. Everything I'd lived since then, the routine, the conversations, the volunteer work, had been a fabrication, an illusion maintained by something determined to keep that door sealed at all costs. I had been trapped in a false existence, an endless loop designed to keep the shadows quiet and forgotten. But opening the door broke the pact. The voices that once whispered now cried out. The shadows gained form and purpose. They wanted to be returned, freed from that prison of forgetfulness, from the walls of the home that held them. And then I understood. The reality around me was collapsing because I had disrupted the balance. The nursing home I thought I knew wasn't just an old building set for demolition. It was a limbo, a threshold between the world of the living and the dead, hidden to protect both sides. When I came back through the corridor, the door vanished behind me, but the feeling of being followed remained. What I didn't know was that the door was no longer just mine. It had started to appear to others. Others trapped in that cycle of forgetfulness, others lost to time. I tried to warn them, but the voice that came from my throat was a whisper, as faint as the ones I once heard. Now I'm stuck between two worlds, knowing that the door will keep opening for more lost souls, and that what was meant to stay locked away is beginning to slip through. In the end, the truth my grandfather feared was revealed. Some prisons don't have keys, only choices you were never meant to make. Some stories never have clear answers, and that's perhaps what scares us the most. To hear more stories like this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and get ready for the next story.